Brothers and sisters, good afternoon. Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life, joining you for Facebook Live. And I have a special session for you this afternoon. I want to talk about a defiant abortionist. First of all, I want to thank you for watching, for listening, for joining me. Some of you join me each day for these broadcasts, and they'll continue each day, and I'm grateful for that opportunity. We're going to do a lot of different things. Sometimes we talk about our Priests for Life ministry. Sometimes we talk about action alerts that we need to take to advance the pro-life cause in our nation. Sometimes we're talking just about developments in the pro-life news, and that's what today's is about. Other times we'll have conversations with other people that'll be on with me. Other times I'll just do a question and answer session with you. We're going to have multiple different ways of doing the Facebook Live. And I want to urge you now, if you're watching but you have not liked my page, or if you have not yet signed up for the notifications so that you can be alerted when I go on with Facebook Live, please do that now as you're watching, because it doesn't always it's not always at the same time. I'm going to be doing it at different times each day, and we want you to be notified when, in fact, I am about to do it. So today, response to a defiant abortionist. I'm talking about abortionist Warren Hern. He's one of the most notorious, most well-known late-term abortionists. And he's out of Boulder, Colorado. I've been to his facility there, of course, to protest and to pray. And Warren Hern is the author of an abortion medical textbook called Abortion Practice. And Abortion Practice is a book actually that I have read from cover to cover. Many of us in pro-life leadership quote from this book. Some of us have read it. In fact, I'll tell you a funny story. One day I was on an airplane, as I often am in the course of my nationwide travels. And it was during the time when I was reading Warren Hern's textbook on abortion. And we pulled up to the gate at our destination, and I'm standing there in the aisle of the plane as we're waiting for them to open the door. And I have Abortion Practice in my hand, and of course I'm dressed as a priest, as I always am. And this guy standing behind me, I notice him looking quizzically at the title of the book, and then looking at me wearing my collar, and looking back at the book. And I could tell what he was thinking. He says, "What on earth is a priest doing with an abortion textbook?" So I started speaking to him. I say, "I know this looks funny, but no," I said, "it's because I oppose abortion, and I do everything I can to study about it and to keep up on what it is and what these abortionists are doing and saying." Well, Warren Hern has again been in the news, and he was in the news because Congress wrote to him. Congress wrote to him and wrote to a number of other abortionists as part of something I have been telling you about here on Facebook Live, and something that Priests for Life has been very involved in, and that is the Select Panel on Infant Lives, the Select Investigative Panel on Infant Lives. This special panel of the United States House of Representatives that was convened at the beginning of the 114th Congress that is now concluding, was tasked with investigating the abortion industry, Planned Parenthood, as well as Planned Parenthood, as well as the rest of the abortion industry, has been under investigation by this panel of the United States House of Representatives. And the reason is that the evidence, many of us have been bringing forward evidence for decades, actually, that these facilities are breaking the law, that they are breaking the law in very many ways. And the panel has been investigating, first of all, the sale of body parts by the abortion industry, for one thing. Secondly, the practice of late-term abortion. Even though technically abortion is legal throughout pregnancy, there have been practices connected with late-term abortion that violate certain state laws. For example, Kermit Gosnell from Philadelphia is now in jail for violating the laws of his state, Pennsylvania. We'll get back to him in a moment. And then also the very disturbing practice for which Kermit Gosnell is also in jail of of killing babies born alive. So babies who come out of the womb and are alive when they come out and are still killed by the abortionist. This is happening, and this is something that is an absolutely horrendous, horrific practice, as you can well appreciate. So, brothers and sisters, the Select Panel on Infant Lives wrote to Warren Hearn in Boulder, Colorado. And let me use this. I'm going to use this, whiteboard for you. So we have Warren's name here, okay? The textbook that he wrote, as I said, is called Abortion Practice. And we have the Select Panel on Infant Lives. That is the House panel. And in order to do its investigative work, this particular panel is empowered with subpoena power. So they can call people to testify. They can call for documentation to get to the bottom of the things that they are investigating. So the Select Panel on Infant Lives wrote to Warren Hearn. Now I want to read to you the letter that was sent to Warren Hearn by the panel, particularly Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee. She is the one who is the chairman of this particular panel. Let me read to you this letter, because it's a very reasonable letter, and then wait till you see what Warren Hearn's response was. 114th Congress of the United States, November 2nd, 2016. Dear Dr. Hearn, on October 7th, 2015, the U.S. House of Representatives created the Select Investigative Panel and empowered the panel to investigate issues related to fetal tissue research, federal funding, and the practices of providers of second and third trimester abortions. This document request is made pursuant to the scope of investigative responsibilities of the panel. Pursuant to H.R. 461, we're seeking the following documents and/or information if in your possession: custody or control, created or dated on or after January 1st, 2010. So now here's the request from this panel of Dr. Hearn. All communications and documents, including contracts with agreements or invoices to which you, the Boulder Abortion Clinic, or any other entity with which you have been affiliated, have been a party, referring to or relating to the procurement and transfer of fetal tissue from you, Boulder, or any other entity with which you have been affiliated. And it asks for other documents along the same lines. What they're trying to do here is to see whether federal laws, which prohibit selling body parts at a profit, were violated. But then I want to focus in especially on, there are 9 requests of all, but let me jump to number 5 here. Chart listing the types of abortions that have taken place at the clinic, including gestation range for each type of abortion. In other words, what method of abortion are you using at your facility, and how old are these babies? Then, listen to this one. These are I'm going to read 7, 8, and 9. Again, Congress is requesting of Warren Hearn, late-term abortionist, the following things. All communications and documents stating the policy and procedures at Boulder for infants born alive during an abortion, including any training provided to staff on how to care for an infant born alive. Number 8, all communications and documents sufficient to show the presence of any equipment that serves infants born alive or persons trained to provide neonatal care for an infant born alive at Boulder. And then number 9, all communications and documents sufficient to show the dates on which any child was born alive at Boulder, the persons who assisted with the care of that child, and the disposition of the child, including any death certificates prepared for that child and any related referrals to a funeral home. Now, one might think that the Congress is being unreasonable here, or is, why are they asking for this kind of thing? Because we know that infants are born alive at these abortion facilities and then killed. One of our good friends and colleagues, in fact, Priests for Life helped to make her story known over 12 years ago, is Jill Stanek. You remember the name Jill Stanek? She was the nurse in just outside of Chicago who was given a role to play in the killing of a baby after being born alive after a failed abortion. It was sadly and ironically at a place called Christ Hospital, but she was told to hold that baby while the baby was dying, not being given any care after having come out of the mother's womb. This deeply offended and impacted Jill, and she has been speaking out publicly about it ever since. This does happen. We have on the state level and also on the federal level legislation to protect babies born alive after failed abortions from being killed. Such legislation would not be necessary if the reality weren't happening. This is legislation that's been passed at the state level. In fact, a state senator in Illinois voted against a bill that would protect babies if they're born alive after a failed abortion. And you know who that was? That was State Senator Barack Obama, who voted against providing protection for babies born alive. He still hasn't sufficiently explained why he would take a position like that. But then also on the federal level, we have the Born Alive Infants Protection Act. And a lot of this, spurred on by the testimony of Jill Stanek, has led to this federal law which President George W. Bush signed. And it simply states that if a baby is born alive, that baby is to be given proper care, even if the baby was born alive after an attempt to kill the child legally by abortion. Now, Kermit Gosnell is serving life in prison because, among other things, he killed babies born alive after an abortion. So, furthermore, let me just read one thing that happened in Florida in March of 2013. A Planned Parenthood lobbyist, once again, congratulations, Planned Parenthood, for these great examples, testified at a Florida legislative hearing and was asked this question. Her name was Alicia LaPolte Snow. She was asked, if a baby is born on a table as a result of a botched abortion, what would Planned Parenthood want to have happen to that child that is struggling for life? Let me ask this question again. If a baby is born, in other words, alive, on a table as a result of a botched abortion, what would Planned Parenthood want to have happen to that child that is struggling for life? And instead of saying, well, obviously we would want to protect the child, that would have been the decent human common sense response, Alicia LaPolte Snow, Planned Parenthood lobbyist, said, quote, we believe that any decision that's made should be left up to the woman, her family, and the physician. End of quote. Any decision that's made? A decision to kill the child after being born alive should be left up to the mother and the family and the doctor? Are you nuts? Are you out of your mind? Have you lost your soul? A year earlier, lest you think that this is just some fantasy out of the mind of Alicia LaPolte Snow or Planned Parenthood, the Journal of Medical Ethics published an article called After Birth Abortion, Why Should the Baby Live? And the authors, Alberto Giubilini and Francesca Minerva, said the following. The moral status of an infant is equivalent to that of a fetus in the sense that both lack those properties that justify the attribution of a right to life to an individual. You realize what they're saying there. That a baby born alive does not even have the right to life, even after the baby is outside the mother's body. So it's no longer a question of, oh, it's my body, it's my choice. We're talking about babies outside the body, alive. And this is in a journal called the Journal of Medical Ethics. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. It's just unbelievable. So, I mentioned these examples. The state legislation, the federal legislation, Alicia LaPolte Snow, Kermit Gosnell in prison, this article in the Journal of Medical Ethics, and we can go on all day with other examples. I state all of this, first of all, to show that it was perfectly reasonable for the Congress of the United States, the Select Panel on Infant Lives, Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn, to write a letter to late-term abortionist Warren Hearn asking for documentations to show, not accusing him of killing babies born alive, but asking for documentation to show that he's following the relevant laws in his Boulder, Colorado abortion facility. Now let's get to Dr. Hearn's response. He responded by taking out a full-page ad in the Denver Post on Sunday, November 27th, just a couple of weeks ago. Full-page ad in the Denver Post. And boy, is he mad. He should be. And here's what he says. I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm going to quote some lines for you here, but we'll have the whole thing on our website. It says, during the past century, we have had tragic experience with the tactics of totalitarian governments that begin their assertion of discriminatory power by first denying the legitimate identity and status of individuals for political purposes. He's reacting in this first part of his letter, and I use reacting rather than responding, because although it was her letter, which I read to you before, was addressed, Dear Dr. Hearn, in the address itself, it just said Warren Hearn. It didn't have doctor, it didn't have the letters that come after his name. And so he's all upset that she didn't recognize the status that he has as a medical professional. Well, brothers and sisters, this is indeed ironic. What he starts to talk about totalitarian governments denying the status and identity of individuals. Let's get something very clear. What makes a government totalitarian? Warren Hearn, all of a sudden, is concerned about totalitarian governments. Totalitarian governments means all total power is in the state to decide, and he's right about this, they decide the identity and status of people. In other words, they have the power of life and death. They can oppress certain segments of the population. They can define them out of existence. They can kill them. You know what Pope St. John Paul II said? Warren Hearn needs to remind himself about this. In Evangelium Vitae, the Gospel of Life, Pope St. John Paul II wrote that when a state authorizes the killing of children by abortion, it has made the state into a tyrant state, and that is going in the direction of totalitarian governments that no longer recognize and protect the equal dignity of all the people in that nation. So abortionist Warren Hearn has it completely backwards and completely upside down. It is not the state that inquires of a child-killing abortionist whether or not they are doing these procedures and whether or not they are killing babies born alive. It is not those who inquire of that who are totalitarian. It's those who do it. It's the nation that allows this to happen in the first place. That's totalitarian. Warren Hearn is concerned about recognizing the status that he has as a doctor and not concerned about recognizing the status of the child in the womb as a person. He's mad because the letters were not put after his name, and so he's ranting and raving about status and identity. And meanwhile, he's not at all concerned that Roe versus Wade said the word person does not include the unborn. This truly is an example of projection and completely upside down thinking. And then he asks Congresswoman Blackburn, what is a second and third trimester abortionist? Please define these terms for me. Why do you address such a letter to me? I am a physician. Dr. Hearn, you are an abortionist. Now, somebody who obtains a degree to practice in psychiatry and obtains an MD and then practices psychiatry is called a psychiatrist. someone who studies the medical aspects of feet and goes into practice for that is called a podiatrist. A person who studies how to do an abortion, and you've written a textbook about it, and then actually does those procedures, is very appropriately called an abortionist. That's what you are. And yet, you go on to write, quote, "The term abortionist is a vicious, despicable, anti-abortion propaganda term intended to slander the person to whom it is applied. Your use of this grotesque term clearly displays your sectarian and punitive purposes, which are the opposite of any attempt to find truth, but rather to punish those you don't understand." So Warren Hearn, who wrote a medical textbook on how to do abortions, and even has abortion instruments named after him. Wouldn't you like your son or daughter to grow up with that distinction? I had an instrument named after me that's used to kill babies. Doesn't want to be called an abortionist. Warren Hearn, you call abortionist a grotesque term. So does that mean you're saying that abortion is a grotesque activity? And if it's not, where in the world does the grotesqueness come from that you claim is attached to the term abortionist? If abortion is part of health care, if this is a service to women, if this is a legal and constitutional right, why on earth are you not proud of the term abortionist? Let's go on. He talks about the clear majority of Americans being in favor of a woman's right to choose an abortion under safe conditions performed by qualified practitioners. Oh, really? In the second and third trimester? You really think that a majority of the American people have ever, in any survey, indicated that they are in favor of abortions in the 4th, 5th, and 6th, and even the 7th, 8th, and 9th months of pregnancy? The American people do not stand in support of that. No majority of the American people favors that. He talks about anti-scientific attitudes. Warren Hearn, the anti-scientific attitudes are not those of us in the pro-life community who are engaged night and day in an effort to help people understand what goes on in an abortion. The anti-scientific attitudes are on the part of people in your camp who try to deny, first of all, that this is a living human being killed by an abortion, and who also are afraid to even describe the procedure that they do. At least in your medical textbook, Abortion Practice, you do identify what these procedures are, and I quote from it all the time, precisely in order to open the eyes and lift off the veil of those who like only to use the nice-sounding terms reproductive choice, reproductive justice, freedom, constitutional rights, women's health care. Those are all very nice terms we can all rally around, but the reality is you talk in your medical textbook about dismemberment and decapitation. Is that not what is done in the abortion procedures you perform? You wrote about it in your book. Decapitate and dismember the fetus. Well, this is exactly unscientific attitudes, anti-scientific attitudes are exactly those that refuse to even describe the medical procedure that is being performed here, and those are the folks on your side of the fence, not on ours. Now then, Warren Hearn makes another assertion here towards the end of the letter, and I'll just comment on this in conclusion. Your sordid exploitation of this activity for political purposes places all of us, patients, physicians, and all members of my staff, at risk of violent retaliation by anti-abortion fanatics. I guess you would include me in that particular group. He goes on to write, you know this. This is not some paranoid fantasy. A number of physicians specializing in abortion services have been assassinated on at least one occasion in the physician's church, and numerous other people, including an off-duty police officer and one physician's bodyguard, have been murdered in cold blood by anti-abortion fanatics. Each assassin, a so-called peaceful anti-abortion protester up until the moment of the murder. When is the last time you spoke out and condemned these senseless and spineless murders? You and your Republican Party are vigorously allied with a violent terrorist movement. I guess you consider me one of the leaders of that movement, that threatens the lives of women, their families, and healthcare workers. As part of this sham investigation, your letter to me and letters to other physicians constitute a program of target identification for anti-abortion assassins. You can deny this, but it is a fact. Yes, but abortionist Warren Hearn, if you're so concerned that this letter to you, which was sent in order to gain information that is very clearly laid out, is in fact a targeting of you and is going to make people who are opposed to abortion more ready to identify you, find you, and kill you, why on earth are you taking out a full-page ad in the Denver Post? Do you really want to keep secret what you do? Why then write a medical textbook on abortion? Now, I'm not saying that, I'm not accepting the premise here, and I'm not saying that the killing of abortion providers is something good. In fact, I am clearly on record as vigorously protesting that from day one. But they see that doesn't matter to you. Because you say, oh yes, people like Father Frank protest this, but then they create a climate of violence by calling abortion the killing of babies. Well, I quote your medical textbook about as far as identifying what abortion is, so don't blame me for that. The fact of the matter is that either you're proud of what you're doing or you're not. And if you're proud of what you're doing, well then not only are you going to not be afraid to be known as an abortionist, not only are you not going to call the term a grotesque one, but you're also going to answer the questions that Congress has given to you, and you're going to say, yes, here's what we do, and we do it properly, and we do it in accordance with all the laws. If that is the case, then say so. And give them the necessary documentation and show them that their concerns are unwarranted, if in fact those concerns are unwarranted. Let me conclude, brothers and sisters, by saying this. With practicing abortionists, numerous times I have sat down with them. I am engaged in dialogue even still with some who practice abortion, who lead pro-abortion organizations. And the point of the dialogue is not compromise. It's not to look for any kind of middle ground. It's simply to make it clear that when we say we respect the dignity of each and every human life, we mean each and every, including even the advocates and practitioners of abortion. So none of this is said with any kind of personal animosity, hatred, certainly not with any desire of justifying violence. In fact, it is said with an understanding and a respect that even the abortionist, even Warren Hearn, is a human being who has dignity, and as such, as a human being, deserves protection and respect for his or her human life, is what we're saying. Not in terms of tolerating the activity of killing babies. In fact, that activity precisely contradicts your own dignity as a human being. So I give this response of Warren Hearn and his refusal to cooperate with Congress, I give this response today in that spirit of inviting him to the same kind of dialogue that I have engaged in with other abortionists, including Martin Haskell, who was another late-term abortionist. I had numerous conversations with him in years gone by, and I am always willing to have such conversations, because when I called Martin Haskell, one of the things I said to him as part of the reason why I wanted to talk to him years ago was precisely that, listen, I'm talking about abortion every day to millions of people. I'm a key leader in this movement. And therefore, when I speak about abortionists and when I speak about abortion, I want to know what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that not only am I being accurate and complete, but also that I'm being fair. that exactly what abortionists do and why they do it, I want to understand that so that I can speak to people knowledgeably and confidently about it, as I have been doing. And that's why I give the abortionist the opportunity to speak with me so that I can more effectively speak with all of you. So that invitation is extended also to Warren Hearn, to his staff, and to anyone who's involved in the abortion industry. But the killing of these children has to stop. It has to stop now. And I praise and I thank the work of the Select Panel on Infant Lives. We have all of you, brothers and sisters, who are joined with us. You know that we have been calling for people to express their thanks, and those letters have been received, passed along to our friends in Congress, the members of this panel on the Republican side, that is. The members on the Democratic side, well, they've criticized and ridiculed and called for an end to the work of the very panel which they have been asked to serve in the first place. So I am going to conclude here. Thank you so much for listening. And once again, those of you who are watching here on Facebook Live, if you're not already subscribed to receive notifications for when I do Facebook Live, please do hit that button, receive the notifications, like my page, spread it to others. Thank you for watching. Watch again tomorrow. We'll be back with some more reflections on the various aspects of pro-life. Thanks, and God bless you all.